In the magic realm, everyone uses magic at their fancy making it, a natural part of everyday life. It is believed that magic is a gift bestowed by God with such a high emphasis placed on its mastery. Magic determines one's social status in the world, and a deep forest where dragons flying about is ordinary. The animals tremble in fear with their mouths wide open as they watch Mash bench press a ridiculous amount of weight. Like it's nothing, his existence defies the natural order. The guy racks the weight and enjoys a cream puff and states that there is nothing like eating one after pumping iron. In a hut nearby, his father named Burndev Regro casually sits on his chair while using magic to pour himself a drink. He lives with his son in the forest, far from other humans. In his old age, very little bothers him. Because through his experiences, he has acquired ways to combat stress. This is put to the test when Mash tries to enter the house and pulls the whole door off. This causes the old man to scream. He wants to know why he ripped the doors off their hinges. His son explains that he couldn't remember if it was supposed to push or pull. This excuse confuses the old-timer because Mash has been living in the house for years. The young man starts to feel bad about his actions and apologizes, promising to fix it. Burndev calms down a little when he sees the kid is remorseful, but he starts to panic again. When Mash tries to fix the door as he turns to the side and continually bashes it against the door frame, he attempts to instruct him to turn it back. But he's unable to do it in time, resulting in Mash breaking the door further. At this point, he has given up, so he pours some tea for both of them to take. He confirms if his son has finished the day's training routine. Mash asks why all of his workouts are physical. Burndev pauses for a moment before. Answering his internal dialogue reveals that Mash is not like ordinary people because he can't use magic at all. So the least he can do is build him up physically. Burned. It doesn't give him an answer and brushes it off as a story for another time. He gets up and tells his son that he is heading out for a little while, so he is trusting him to take care of their crib. Mash is content with the agreement and has figured out on how to fix the door his father wants him to learn how to open and close it. Instead, Burndev seriously reminds him not to venture into the city. While he's gone, as soon as his father turns away, he removes a flyer from a bakery advertising a limited edition flavored cream puff. He puts on a cloak and jogs towards the city. As he's unable to resist the treats despite his father's stern warning, this guy is an absolute menace. He arrives in the city with his head up, which allows him to blend in. He looks around and notices that everyone is using magic to the point that they're utilizing it for things that can be easily done with the good old hand. He arrives at the bakery, and the smell of the freshly baked goods makes his body tense up with excitement. This causes him to clutch his hands tight. Mash steps forward and places an order for 7 pieces of the limited edition cream puffs. The baker is shocked when he hands over the coins because they are mangled, mashed comments that he got too excited and squashed them in his hand. The baker is sure that they don't bend. When someone squeezes them in their hands, the young man apologizes as he straightens them. This fee causes the worker to scream. He calms down after a moment and hands Mash over his orders. A sudden gust of wind removes his hip, revealing his face. Everyone immediately looks at him with worried expressions. They begin to mutter and panic, stating that they don't see a mark on his face. Meanwhile, Brad at Magic Police creeds that newspaper, which reports on the year's divine visionary. The chosen student is Ray Ames, the second year at Easton Magic Academy. This title is awarded to the pupil who demonstrates the highest degree of excellence over the school year. The recipient is also awarded a promotion to nobility, among others. Rewards. Brad gets salty looking at it and compares it to his dull life and job. He has someone tied up in a cell. The man pleads for forgiveness, confessing that he only stole something small. His comment just makes Brad angrier because his crime has given him more work. The officer removes his one in preparation to give him a punishment that will make him regret his crime. But the prisoner is saved by a call. Someone informs Brad that a young man is walking around the city without a mark back on the streets. Mash walks around oblivious to what is causing all the commotion as people stare at him. He remembers the warning his dad gave him and apologizes to the vision of his father, but he feels like it was worth making the journey for the goblin cream. Puff's his stroll is interrupted. When he bumps into policeman Terry, the officer gets riled up that he got some of the fillings on his uniform. But he's at fault because he's woozy. The young man tries to seek forgiveness by offering him a cream puff, but Terry knocks it out of his hand. Perhaps if it was a donut, he might have accepted. As he continues to berate him, Mash rips his uniform, which shocks everyone he was intending to wash and return it to the officer. Brad arrives at the scene and quickly makes Terry stand down. He looks over to Mash, who is enjoying his dessert. The officer is confused as to why he's been so casual in such a situation. Before he can fully interact with the unmarked kid, Brenda swipes his son and dashes off. Brad sees this as an opportunity to get a promotion. So he sends a magic bird to follow the two as soon as the father and son get home. Burned. It scolds Mash for going into the city. Despite being warned so many times, the old-timer quickly realizes that his son is regretful about his actions. This quells his anger, but he punishes him by having him repeat that morning's training routine. Mash accepts his dad. Judgment, but before he heads to work out, he gives him the cream puffs he bought for him. Burn Dead rushes to the door to open it for Mash after remembering what happened earlier on. He really can't stay mad because he knows that Mash is a good kid at heart. Burn Dead knows that he's at the age where he wants to go out and explore, but they have been living in isolation to make sure that he's safe looking at the situation in town. The father is sure that the magic police have caught wind of Mash and his trait. As he plans his next move, Burn Dead notices a magic bird perched on a branch, looking into the house. Before he can process the information, one side of the home is breached by a unit led by Brad. He smugly greets the old man and asks about his son's location. All the while, Mash heads into the woods and begins to manipulate the weights like they are fake this time. A little squirrel is horrified by what it is seeing. The situation gets more bizarre when he states that he can complete the workout in 5 minutes if he puts his mind to it. He heads back home to eat his favorite dessert as he approaches. He even sings a song about the food he's about to consume. When he reaches the door, the same predicament strikes again as he wonders if it is a push or a pull. He pauses when he overhears the unit leader talking at this point. Brad has burned it up and restrained him. By the neck, the officer reveals that the reason why magic has flourished since the dawn of recorded history is that they have aggressively ridden themselves of those who are not able to use magic. This is a necessary sacrifice to maintain this balance. So he wants to know where his son is. The old timer remains tight-lipped, causing Brad to throw him around out of frustration. The officer reminds him that it is a serious offense to shelter an unmarked. As he sits there, Burn Dead thinks about how his whole life he was labeled as a failure in everything he did. This label persisted till his adulthood, and it became unbearable. So one night he went to end it all. However, he paused when he heard baby Mash crying. He noticed that he was abandoned because he was unmarked. When he picked him up, he began to laugh, which touched him dearly, so he decided to raise him as they were both rejected by society. That moment was the first time in his life that he felt like someone needed him. Even though they are not related by blood, he will always be a father to Mash. Burn Dead begins to shout, instructing his son to run. While Brad tries to shut him up, he orders his men to check into the area for him. He must be close enough to hear the warning. The old man continues to shout, even though he's getting beaten. The officer has had enough and charges up a spell to finish off Burn Dead. Mash comes in hot with a powerful punch through the door, knocking the first subordinate out instantly. Everyone looks at him in disbelief as the raw power he just displayed is not normal. He stands there and still smoking like a rifle after being shot. Terry marches over to intimidate him, but he rips his shirt again and begins to unleash a barrage of slaps that knock him out. Mash reveals to Burn Dead that he didn't run because they're family. He then turns to Brad, declares that he's going to send him to hell. Brad finds this amusing. He doesn't see how Mash can take him down without magic at this point. Terry has regained consciousness, and the consequences of the slaps are there for all to see. He reveals that the unit leader was on the Bureau of Magic Security. Force the mages in the area can't compare to him, let alone a magicless kid. Brad charges a spell, and his number one fan comments that it is a spell strong enough to drive away a dragon. The officer fires it, but Mash exhibits a flick of the wrist and swats it away like an unwanted booger. Brad can't believe what he is seeing and gets startled for a moment. He quickly regroups and fires a more powerful spell, even though Terry pleads for him not to release it. Brad is gobsmacked as Mash sends it back to the center same-day delivery. It jets past his head and explodes deeper into the forest. He continues to fire more attacks, but the magicalist boy begins to deflect them, inspired by various sports from volleyball to football, and even juggles some. Mash picks up his father's wand and asks permission to use it, the officer thinks that he's got magic and puts up a barrier, but to it. Surprise match launches the one which shatters the barrier and leaves a little cut on Brad's cheek. He falls to the ground with a look of defeat on his face. Burn Dead is shocked because he didn't expect the training to create such a monster. Brad begins to laugh at this whole situation. He decides to offer Mash a deal. He wants him to enroll in a magic school and become the year's divine visionary. If he gets selected, it means the gods have accepted him, which in turn will lead to society accepting him. Brad wants the fortune and prestige that comes with it, as his backer Burnded tries to dissuade his son from taking the deal. But the officer explains that the only other option is that they will get hunted for the rest of their lives. Mash takes the deal, so with the aid of Brad, he gets a fake mark and is enrolled in magic school to be the best magician. Without an ounce of magic, he stands in front of the school, ready to crush his competition. The story continues at the academy, which is said to be a historic and prestigious school that produces people that are known to be pillars of the magic realm. The prospective students gather at one of the open fields for the notoriously difficult entrance examination. Less than 3% of applicants get admitted, meaning only those with superior magical power are allowed to graze the school. Pulse Mash stands there with no magical power, looking to make a splash while the students prepare. Lucci decides to get an early look at the year's applicants. He notes that a few of the candidates are from higher society, which makes him happy given the prestige of the school, but his thoughts are getting distracted by a clanging sound that begins to irritate him. Lucci scans around to find the culprit, and he's frozen in shock to see Mash lifting such ridiculous weight. He's also confused that someone would be pumping iron just when they're about to start the exam. For magic school, Lucci calms himself down and immediately labels Mash as a slacker. He looks over again and is shocked that he's doing the iconic invisible chair while reading a fitness book. Haters will say he stole the invisible cloak from Harry Potter. Lucci is more offended that he's not reading a magic book. He even notices Burn Dead and Brad looking the exact opposite of inconspicuous as they try to blend in to keep an eye on Mash throughout the examination. His father is a little skeptical about how his son is going to pass their test without using magic. But the magic officer is confident that his scar will fool everyone, as it's indistinguishable from the real one. All Mash has to do is pass the tests. Lucci does not think much of it, but he doesn't expect him to go further. Lucci's voice is projected across the area, welcoming everyone while Mash eats. His cream puff's wondering what kind of test he's going to have to do. He appears stylishly with a burst of flames, which impresses everyone. Lucci announces that he will be overseeing their examination. The students get both intimidated and happy as he's the 7th best up-and-coming mage. They continue to give him more hype, stating that despite his young age, he has mastered a lot of advanced spells. Lucci twitches in excitement, wanting them to praise him more. Mash kills his hype by commenting on his lame entrance that commented on his lame entrance that commented annoys Lucci, who makes the promise to fail him. He announces that the first examination will commence as he makes seats appear from the ground and summons paper and feathers for them to write. The students begin to get excited because they have never seen this type of magic before. Mash acts like a stoplight for the hype train when he points out that he could have just taken them to an already prepared room for the test. This second comment makes Lucci promise to end him for his transgression. He again brushes off Mash's comments because he believes Mash will not last long. The students take a seat at their respective places and are told that they have 30 minutes to complete the test. They all turn their papers over and are surprised to see the questions squirming around the page. Lucci reveals that he has enchanted the papers with magic, so to pass the exam, they must dispel the enchantment and line up the questions. Burn Dead is not confident his son can pull this one off. Even Brad starts to second guess his proposition. Meanwhile, Mash kindly asks the letters to stop moving across the page, but nothing happens, so he snaps his pen in frustration on his second time, asking the words get intimidated and quickly arrange themselves. His people can't believe what they are seeing. He takes his paper to Lucci to inspect, and the examiner is surprised that he managed to complete the task. Mash continues to use his freakish physical capabilities to pass more of the tests, which puts everyone in a state of disbelief. Lucci watches on, fresh, frustrated, and a slacker like Mash is still around. He thinks of a way to eliminate him and quickly announces the next test. Lucci erects a maze around the students and gives them 30 minutes to reach the goal. Mash feels confident about this one. But he is approached by Lemon, who wants to tag along with him and explains that it would be more efficient. He sees the logic in her statement and agrees as they navigate she falls into the majority of the traps, which makes him think twice about teaming up with a useless Lemon while his guard is down. She apprehends him with a handcuff spell and reveals that she has been deceiving him. Her true aim is to keep him away from the goal. She is shocked to see him casually break the cuffs and leave, because he also has his reasons why you must reach the goal as she plans her next move. A giant monster asks her riddle, but she's unable to answer because she's so terrified. She tries to attack with her wand, but the Egyptian monster knocks it out of her hand and counters when her time is up. However, Mash comes to the rescue and knocks it out with a clean punch. She's baffled as to why he came back to say as someone who just tried to hinder him. Mash explains that he noticed that her reasons were similar to his, so he felt sorry for her. Because of the delay, she expresses that they might not make it to the goal on time. The other students who made it out congregate waiting for the timer to end. Lucci is confident that Mash will not make it given the time remaining. His face changes when they hear loud thuds approaching them, and everyone's jaw drops when they see that Mash has created a shortcut by knocking the walls down. The examiner is especially surprised because the walls are 1 meter thick and impervious to all magic. Headmaster Wahlberg watches the commotion from his office, and he is intrigued by Mash. The student begin to question the legitimacy of how the two completed the maze, and this leads to the enchanting that the duo should be sent home. Mash takes all their criticism head on, but it makes him a little sad, so Lemon shouts for them to stop. She tells them it was her fault, and this prompts Lucci to tell her to shut up and threatens her for good measure. Lemon doesn't heed his warning and continues to confess that Lucci promised her a place at the school if she stopped Mash from getting to the goal. She took the offer because her family is poor, so she wanted to be accepted into the school to open opportunities to remove them from that condition. She embellished her encounter with Mash, a little stating that he asked for her hand in marriage. But the guy calmly corrects her. Lucci admits to his actions and even confirms that he doesn't like Mash. The examiner begins to talk down on them and release his magic energy as he asks if they want to challenge his decision. Mash dashes over to him and snaps his wand as he tells the professor that he's gone too far. The rest of the students can't believe what he has just done. His guardians are also taken aback by his boldness. Before Lucci can take further action, the headmaster stops him in his tracks with one shout while he floats above him. He announces the final interviews will now commence from this point. Headmaster Wahlberg claims he's taking charge of the examination. He asks Lucci to come to see him at his office when the selection process has finished. He selects Mash as the one to be interviewed, and he appears in a dark room surrounded by officials. They exchange greetings, and Mash expresses his gratitude to be allowed into the HQ. They ask him a series of questions, and the others are not impressed with his answers, but the headmaster is intrigued by them. He wants to know why he decided to save the girl. With the knowledge that he would not have enough time to complete the maze, he simply lets the old-timer know that he feels like he would have regretted it if he didn't do it. The headmaster is amused with that answer and concludes that he must be the type who acts before thinking. Mash never considered that the Sphinx might be stronger, nor did the idea of not being able to break the walls across his mind. Mash believes that it had to be done, even if it was considered. Wahlberg attributes his words to Mash as not understanding the ways of the world yet. Beta Dumbledore explains that many creatures exist in the world that are stronger than him. He wonders if he could keep the same logic and take the same course of action when he's faced with something that overwhelmingly outpowers him. As the headmaster makes this statement, he uses himself as an example and releases a sinister aura before casting an ominous-looking spell. Even the teachers are terrified by the magical power. The spell begins to activate as the monster cranks down a pointed blade tip towards a doll. Mash calmly wants to know what stands before him. Wahlberg explains that it is an ancient spell that transfers the soul of the target's most cherished people into the doll. Burned suddenly fades to the floor as his soul is transferred. If the knife were to stab into the soul-filled doll, that cherished person will never return to their body. Mash begins to punch the blade, trying to stop it, but it doesn't move, and it causes great damage to his hand. The teachers watch in shock as Mash lodges his hands between the blade and the doll, which halted even the headmaster, is a little surprised by his actions. The young man states that Wahlberg can't maintain his spell forever, so he has turned this into an endurance contest the headmaster believes depending on the person. Power can be used to harm or help. This is why he emphasizes protecting the weak and regulating the strong, also known as nobles oblige. From his observation, Wahlberg feels like Mash is a human that possesses that capacity. He deactivates the spell and apologizes as the place is lit up with candles. The old wizard reveals that he was testing him. He has no sinister intention of that nature. Mash accepts his apologies and answers his question of if he was to face the headmaster. The guy simply states that he would beat him down with his fists. Even the bootleg Dumbledore is stunned by that statement. The other teachers find his comment to be the highest form of insolence, causing them to scold him. The headmaster laughs again and welcomes him to the Easton Magic Academy by offering him a spot. Mash is already a legend in my eyes. All the while, Brendan's soul returns to his body. After a short while, they begin class where they learn the lot. Opening spell, which is the most basic the teacher demonstrates, but Mash just opens it with his bare hands. The tutor gets irate that he used brute force to break the lock, which did not open it. She reminds him that he's here to learn magic. She is shocked when Mash explains that he's not good with magic. Finn sits next to him and already sees Mash as a troublemaker and knows to keep his distance. Meanwhile, a group of seniors peek into the class with a sinister look as they smile. Later on, Finn looks for his dorm, hoping that he's not staying together with Mash. He reaches his place of stay and is surprised that there is no door. He turns and sees he is rooming with Mash, who is holding the door. This is not his ideal situation. The two introduce themselves, and Mash just warns him that he might cause trouble because he doesn't understand how things work yet. He changes into his workout gear and begins to introduce his muscles, which Finn finds strange now that the ice is broken. He asks how to become the divine visionary. Finn explains that one has to collect gold coins by excelling in tests coursework. Extracurricular activities and school life, silver and bronze, are awarded for lesser performances no matter how many gold coins one collects. If grades are not kept up each semester, one will be suspended. After hearing this, Mash holds his head in despair, but he snaps out of the mindset quickly and offers Finn a cream puff to cement their friendship that has accepted him. Things continue with Mash eating cream puffs in his dorm while his roommate does some studying. He interrupts Finn to ask if he could lend him his broom for his class. The following day, the guy brought a giant plant root thinking it was a broom, which surprises Finn. Finn concedes and agrees to allow him to borrow it. Mash expresses his gratitude, commenting that he knew that his roommate was a great guy. The following day, the students gather in an open space where the tutor introduces the broom writing lesson. She explains that one must channel magic energy into the broom and command it with the keyword fly. The next step is to straddle the broom and regulate the magic to keep it afloat. She instructs them to begin immediately. The students begin to command their brooms one at a time. I am interested to see how Mash is going to get away with this one. Before he begins, he reaffirms the reason why he must succeed before he commands his broom to fly. But nothing happens because of his lack of magic power. As he stands there unable to lift his broom, a student begins to mock him for not being able to complete the task and comment on how he's slowing down the rest of the class. Mash responds by lifting the broom with a stamp of his foot, but he delays his fly command. The student watches gobsmacked for a moment before calling Mash out on the cap of his lift. He calls him a cheater, noting that his broom flew up before he commanded it, but the magicless guy behaves oblivious to his comments. Their interaction is interrupted when the teacher announces line trials that will be held to determine who the fastest student is. The student decides to use it as an opportunity to wager against Mash the loser has to submit to. The winner till they graduate, Mash, agrees, so they line up prepared to race as the tutor stands ready to get the thing started. The student is very confident that he will win because unlike the transfers he has been riding brooms since middle school, the tutor recognizes Mash as the class clown that interrupted the lesson with his op strength based on his past performance. She doesn't think that he can even ride a broom. As soon as she begins the race, Mash already dashes to the end. The student is left gobsmacked again at what he just witnessed. The fee gets the tutor in an irate state as she comments on his incredible speed and announces multiple times that a new world. Record has been set. His classmates are confused about what just happened. Finn internally reveals that he got a good look at what Mash just did as soon as the teacher said, "Start." The guy launched the broom and immediately dashed toward it at high speed. Mash turned into a physicist and used the air resistance to decrease his approach, which also gave him the chance of closing the gap and mounting on the bromide air. Finn can't even fathom how that's even possible. All the while, the arrogant student runs over to Mash, adamant that he must have cheated, refusing to believe what he just witnessed. Mash only comments that he feels bad for him as he can't face the fact that he lost. He even adds insult to injury by telling him that he will drop the wager out of pity. Just before the arrogant student can run his mouth, it suddenly gets sewed shut by Kabul, who comments that he shouldn't make a scene with a fake smile. He apologizes on his behalf for his rudeness, revealing that the arrogant student is his friend. The other students watch. I'm worried at the fact that Cavill is talking to Mash, and they comment that he's a target. Now, they all agree to stay out of it as they don't want any trouble, but they feel bad. For Mash, as he is Cavill's first victim, now that they have moved to high school, the bootleg Draco Malfoy admits that the feat he just performed caught his attention and offers friendship with Mash Cavill, introduces himself, and Mash completely butchers his name to the point most would take it as an insult. The whole class falls silent after hearing the name. Butchering Cavill tries to hide his frustration and prepares to cast a spell. However, the teacher stops and interjects, reminding him that they are in the middle of a class. Wish Malfoy finds Mash funny and suggests that they meet again at their current location after school. The magicalist student agrees. After the lesson, Cavill pulls the arrogant student to a secluded place and begins to beat him for losing in such a spectacular fashion. Meanwhile, the roommates walk the corridors when Mash wants to know more about Cavill. Finn begins his exposition by stating that Cavill is a continuing student from the Academy Middle School Division just like him. Everyone is afraid of him because his father is a high-ranking member of the Bureau of Magic and the organization is absolute in their world. Mash gives shifty eyes as he states that he knew that. When he was oblivious to the fact, Finn simplifies it by saying that once someone stands against him, they would get expelled. The vice principal of the academy has close ties with the bully's family. This malicious duo has tormented countless students, which is why everyone obeys and fears the guy. After school, Mash bakes cream puffs, as making them from scratch once in a while is fun, but he feels like he's forgetting something important. His hunch is true, because Cavill and his lackeys are waiting for him, and the guy is irate that he has not shown up yet. The following day, Mash removes his books in preparation for the next class and notices that it's in a bad state and just comments that it is falling apart. Cavill's lackeys watch on laughing. They know there is something more sinister going on. Their boss comes to confront Mash about not attending their meeting the previous day. He realizes that was his hunch and apologizes, explaining that he was making cream puffs, which enrages Cavill, but he changes the topic as he has caught wind that Mash is aiming to be the divine visionary. He uses his close relationship with the vice principal to promise him a favorable word. All Mash has to do is follow his orders. So the magicless guy quickly agrees to the terms and conditions without reading the fine prints, but he does find it strange that such a deal has come all of a sudden. Cavill informs him that he just wants to help him out because he seems like a fun person. He has Mash hold their items, polishing his shoes. Among other things, he gets back to his next lesson and finds that that book was destroyed again. He asks Finn if he can share and imposes himself, even though the guy is reluctant. Mash thanks him again for all his help and even gives him some cream puffs to show his appreciation. He ends it by stating how lucky he is to have a great guy like him as a friend. Later on, Mash gets a drink for Cavill, but he deliberately pours it on the floor and asks him to clean it, which he does to a high level. During that interim, it is revealed that it was Finn, under the orders of Cavill, who was destroying his books. They want him to take things a step further and burn his clothes. But the kind words Mash spoke to him earlier gives Finn the courage to refuse. Cavill wastes no time and activates his thread spell that pins Finn to the ground. The boss informs him that he has made a mistake, which is why he must drop down and beg for forgiveness. All the while, Mash looks for Finn when he realizes that he still has his book, the magic. Student hears the sound of someone getting beaten up and goes to check it out. He arrives to find Finn on the ground, bleeding. Cable tells Mash that he is only getting an apology from the guy. Mash makes his way over to Finn to make sure that he's okay, but Finn doesn't care about his current state. He begins to cry, confessing that it was him that destroyed his books under the orders of Cabby. Mash, calling him a friend, hit him deeply. So he is compelled to apologize to him. Cavill tries to manipulate Mash by informing him that he is heading to meet with the vice principal and drops him an invite, proclaiming that it is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Mash just walks up to him and bounces his head off the floor, knocking him out instantly. He instructs Cavill that he is the one who needs to apologize. The bully's lackeys are shocked by what Mash, just to giving the status of Cavill Finn, tells him that his actions will get him expelled. After rethinking everything, he realizes that what he has just done may land him in some hot water. Vice Principal Farman appears out of nowhere and agrees with Mash's statement. He reveals that Campbell's father has entrusted him to look after his son. He witnessed the entire incident. Mash is happy to hear this because that means his name will be cleared, but to his shock, Farman plans to twist the situation to make Mash look like the aggressor, and even tells them that a school conference will be held regarding their roles in this incident. The vice principal begins to explain that Cavill is of a higher status, which means he gets different treatment before he can finish his explanation. Mash makes his situation worse by dashing over and kneeing the vice in the face. Finn and the lackeys almost die from shock. Mash explains that he only attacked because it seemed like Farman wasn't interested in the truth, so while he's already in hot water for his first attack, this second one wouldn't make a big difference in his current standing, which is a fair point. Farman holds his face as he complains that Mash just assaulted him. He informs him that he can expel ordinary students like him at any time he tries to attack the magical student, but he counters by slapping mud in his face. Mash begins to dig, and he places the vice inside before covering it. Mash threatens him that he can be buried alive at any time. Even if he's apprehended, he will find him and bury him. The vice pleads for him to stop. As he throws mud to cover him up later on, Mash is summoned to the principal's office. Wahlberg reads his transgressions and informs him that this incident is seen as a problem. At the Bureau of Magic, he received a notice from them to expel him immediately. The headmaster states that the Bureau is the country's highest legal authority. He will even go as far as to say that they control the country. At the core of the organization are the divine visionaries. The Academy furnishes the Bureau with those who attain the top honors at the Academy. Given Cable's status, what he has done is unforgivable. But what Wahlberg finds more egregious is a world where the caring is at a disadvantage as he burns the Bureau's notice. He discloses his concern about the current state of things in the world. This was the main reason he took the position as headmaster of the Academy years ago. He sees that at the top, things only work to serve the elites. He acknowledges that there are so few people like Mash who sacrifice themselves for what is right. The divine blind dictionaries who leave the Bureau have their role to carefully consider what people desire, which is why he hopes that Sunday Mash will become a divine visionary. He tells the headmaster that he already plans to become one, so the old guy is happy to hear this. Mash gets information overload when he tries to explain how to achieve that goal. So he simplifies it, stating that he should earn high marks in his classes and school activities and acquire as many coins as possible. Wahlberg promises to deal with the Bureau and the vice principal. This will leave Mash to concentrate on achieving his goal as the student leaves. Wahlberg sees one more problem that Mash will eventually face, but he has faith that he will overcome it. Mash makes his way back to his dorm, where Finn waits. He ended up with no punishment, however, his beating of Cable, and the vice gained acknowledgement from the other students. The following day, he is recruited to Play Dweller by Tom, despite enlightening him that he can't ride a broom. The day of the match arrives, and the crowd goes wild. All the players float on their broomsticks as they play the game. Mash tells them that he can't fly, so they start to heckle him by throwing things at him. The game of Dweller continues as the Lang dorm dominates. All Mash can do is watch from the ground. Due to his inability to use magic, given the situation, he wishes he was home, relaxing instead. Meanwhile, in the crowd, Lemon and Finn watch on worry that Mash hasn't taken to the area the team captain to. Comes down to give him a pep talk. He states the Mash swore he could be number one, which he denies ever saying. Tom advises him not to be complacent and makes an analogy to bamboo, which just confuses Mash. He even begins to speculate that the captain might be high on the hush-hush based on his nonsensical comments. Tom forgot to tell him the rules of the Quidditch clone, to be honest. This game is borderline copyright infringement. Jake should lawyer up both teams' fight for control of the ball midair and score points by passing it through the opposition's ring. The use of magic is forbidden, as the sport emphasizes on. Broom technique, while he explains the Langdorm, continued to score more points. Tom is passionate about the Dweller, as he always put his everything into each game. He recruited Mash because he saw something special about him. He gets back on his broom and hopes that Mash joins them soon as he floats like a butterfly. The captain from the other team intentionally comes in like a bee sting and crashes into Tom, causing him to fall badly. The fangirls of Tom begin to let out a worried scream. The aggressor sarcastically apologizes and says that it was an accident. Mash rushes over to make sure that he's fine, but Tom tells him that his hand is broken. Langdorm scores another goal, giving them a 40-point lead. Tom calls out the opposition's sense of sportsmanship, but they laugh at his cry and call it nonsense. For them, all that matters is a winning mindset. The captain finds the situation amusing, with him being down by such a significant margin. Given the time, he knows they can't catch up, despite his dismal situation. Tom tells Matt that winning isn't everything, as one's effort and commitment is more important. The lead just keeps getting worse. The opposition is confident that they have this win secured given the margin and the time left, and not to mention the fact that two of their team members are down, but little do they know that they have annoyed Mash. The guy picks up the broomstick and grabs it tightly in a frustrated manner. He does things his way and leaps into the air to everyone's surprise, but someone points out that he stopped in mid-air upon closer inspection. The students figure out he's maintaining his elevation with rapid foot kicks, which just leaves them dumbfounded. Mash asks his teammates to pass in the ball he's faced with the other team, who rush to take the ball from him. However, they get a rude awakening when Mash hurls the ball from a distance that jets past the opposition and into the ring, scoring his team. A point. Everyone is amazed by the shot, but they still specify that the limited time and the points gap are an unfavorable situation. A keen spectator notices the ball's trajectory as it comes back to Mash like a boomerang. They scream collectively in disbelief. He uses his unnaturally strong fingers to curve the ball in such a manner that he just continues to spam the shot like that one cousin whose spam moves in a fighting game, and within no time, he surpasses Langdorm's score. But continues till he sets a new all-time record. Lemon watches with heart-shaped eyes as the announcer declares Adler Dorm as the winner of the first Dweller match of the season. The crowd go wild, and they begin to apologize to Mash for their earlier heckling due to their record-setting score. The team were given silver coins. Mash inspects it, wondering why the shape is so odd. Godfin is still impressed by how amazing that game was, and is dazzled by how quickly Mash has managed to get such a prestigious reward, despite the fact that he has only just transferred. He is grateful for the admiration, but he doesn't think he will be playing the game again. Tom interrupts them with a call, and as he walks towards them, the girls start going wild. As he approaches, Finn thinks that he's coming to cause beef. However, it's the exact opposite, as he hugs Mash while crying and thanks him for the clutch win. Later on, the magical student's achievement is pasted in the newspaper, which Lance reads. He recognizes Mash from the entrance exam and destroys his picture as he recalls that he risked failing for a stranger. He labels him a naive student while opening his locks before picking him as his next target the following day. Mash sits in class as Tom tries to get in to come to practice, while Lemon attempts to get closer to him by offering to study all their classes as she holds a tower of books. But Mash is not interested in engaging in any of them. Finn doesn't want to be roped, and so he pretends to be sleeping. Lance comes in and interjects, expressing his wish to join the fun. Tom immediately notices his double marks and speculates that he's a first year since he has never seen him. Before Lemon is aware of Lance and points out that he ranked first in the entrance exams, she comments on how cute he is now that she's seen him up close. However, she stops her trail of thought because she has given her heart to Mash. The magical student tells the newcomer that what they were doing wasn't fun, so Lance suggests that they change that. Mash gets up interested, Asking if they are playing hide and seek, the top-ranked pulls out a bottle from his row, pointing out that it is a special magic tool that is ancient. He opens the lid, which shrinks Tom, Lemon, and Finn before they are sucked into the vessel he reveals that he is capable of. Trapping people, Lance informs Mash that if he wants them back, he must come to the forest, and then disappears. The two later meet at the designated place, and Mash wants to know what all of this is about. Lance points out that he wants them to bet because, just like Mash, he too is collecting the coins he has 2 silvers at the moment, which shocks Tom, who makes it known that it is only a select number of upperclassmen that have them. It is revealed that line marks indicate the amount of magic power one possesses. Lance has 2 meaning. He's really bad news. The majority of people are known as single-line magic users. However, there are rare exceptions, with multiple marks known as double-line magic users. They exist in the world at a rate of 1 in 100. These people are looked at as chosen by magic itself. Lance states that they will bet each other's silver coin in a match they will fight until one can no longer continue or gives up. We learn that any other format of dueling is prohibited in the school, since he has his friends hostage in a bottle. Mash doesn't have a choice but to accept. He points out that he has a huge advantage just by having the bottle, as he knows about his selfless personality. But resting face number 2 knows that he doesn't need this advantage to win. Lance points out that he was too soft by helping Lemon during the entrance exams. He is disgusted that he prioritized someone else over his own goals. Tom and Lemon advise Matt not to take the fife the magical student had enough of the long talk and wants to start the fight. Lance showcases his power by clearing the land using a gravity spell. The clearing can be felt by Burn Dead and Brad, who are lurking about, still trying to keep an eye on Mesh. The officer expresses his worry, which catches Burn Dad's attention. But he quickly explains that he is worried about his profits back to the fight. Lance has cleared the place, leading concentric rings. Mash comments on the flashness of the performance, calling it unnecessary. Mash dashes towards him, which confuses the number 1, who feels like it's a bit disrespectful to try and win against him. Without magic, he pins him to the floor with his gravity spell and begins to top down to Mash, stating that he has no aspirations, so he doesn't deserve the silver coin. Lance, on the other hand, is certain that he will be the one who will finish on top. Mash tries to stand, but is unable to, as the number 1 states that no human can withstand his gravity. The magical student plunges his hand into the ground and rips out a root which destabilizes the ground around Lance's feet, causing him to retreat. He lands in a lower position as Mash stands up looking down at him, asking if he too likes rolling on the ground. Mash wastes no time and dashes towards him again. Lance uses his spell, but the magical student increases his speed and escapes the area of effect and swings. But his target dodges. Lance notices that he's faster than earlier. As he retreats, he drops his locket, which lands near Mash. The guy opens it and finds a picture of Lance's younger sister. He confesses that he is overprotective of her. Mash returns it to him, and Lance asks him what the most precious thing in the world is. He feels like he has been put on the spot, but he answers saying that cream puff human life, love, and freedom are precious to him. But Lance thinks his answers are all wrong. Mash turns the question to him, and with a crazed look in his eyes, he states that it's his sister. The magicalist student points out that his answer proves that everyone has different priority. But Lance is disgusted and feels like the world is full of idiots because, objectively speaking, his sister is the most important. Mash just finds him creepy. The guy casually walks over to the edge of a cliff and dangles the bottle with Mash's friends inside. Lance explains that he's going to drop the bottle off the cliff and speed up the fall using his magic. When Mash tries to save them, he will be open for a finishing attack. Lance explains that for the sake of his sister, he can turn into the worst monster. He has a flashback that explains his motivations. His sister became ill with an incurable disease that will strip her mark and magical power in the next 5 years. When that happens, they will have to hand her over to the authorities, who will exterminate her as the genetics for non-magic users can't contaminate the gene pool. Lance promises to become a divine visionary so he can enter the Bureau of Magic to change the rotten system. His current action is to save his sister by any means necessary. He drops the bottle and activates his spell. As it jets down, He turns to Mash and is surprised to see that the guy has changed into his gym gear. The magicless guy warms up and enters sprinter start position. He activates hamstring magic, trying to cap his magic power lance. Looks a bit confused because he has never heard of a spell like that. Mash's veins start to bulge as his muscles tense, and aura can be seen around him as he prepares his big bang dash before he sets off, he tells Lance that losing to him and not rescuing his friends never existed as options for him. He springs off, and in an instant he's back with the bottle in hand. Lance can't believe he retrieved it in a flash. He wonders if Mash is using high-level physical enhancement magic. The magical student states that they should stop because Lance doesn't seem like a bad guy, so he doesn't think they should be fighting. Mash points out that the bottle he dropped was empty. He dashes over and reveals the real one and frees his friends. Lance concedes the battle and gives him the silver coins and leaves all the while. His friends are so grateful for the save. This affection makes Mash regret opening the bottle immediately. That brings the episode to an end.